Hi, I'm Valerie, and you're listening to The Beauty Brains. Welcome to The Beauty Brains, a show where real cosmetic chemists answer your beauty product questions and give you an insider's look at the cosmetics industry. This is episode 393. I'm your host, Valerie George, and with me today is Perry Romanowski. Hi, Perry.
Hello, Valerie. Great to see you as always.
Welcome back. On today's show, we're going to cover lots of questions and beauty news, including, are cosmetic products filled with microplastics? What do you do about facial hair? Is jojoba oil good to use with retinol? How can a formula with hypochlorous acid and azeleic acid be stable? And finally, how do you handle acne at the hairline? But first, inane chit chat.
Yes, Valerie, I'm just back from China. You know, that's a long flight.
It is pretty far away, that's for sure.
So I'm in coach, and I'm next to a guy and his wife. And, it gets the middle of the night, and I don't really sleep on planes. I watched, 15 movies there and back.
Yeah.
But, so then the guy goes to sleep, and he leans on my shoulder.
Okay, for how long?
Well, I started doing this, I sort of moved my arm, and he kind of moved a little bit, then he went back, and then eventually I was just like, oh, I'm just watching the movie, so I just let him stay there.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Would you just push him off, or what do you do?
Well, I don't know. I can sleep on planes for sure. Now, if I were doing an international flight, I would hate to fly in coach. I mean, I do it.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what, when I was an executive at a leading salon brand, I was spoiled getting to fly business class international. It's like flying first class.
Yeah. I mean, I've done premium. I've never done first class for a long flight. I've done first class once.
It's so hard to go back. And there's a really great meme on Instagram where Michael Jackson is pointing to all the places how his shoulder hurts and his wrist hurts and all this kind of stuff. And it's me after having to go back to economy after flying business class.
I will say, when I get on the plane, I kind of scorn at those people all in the first class who got to get on first, and then they got the big seats.
Free drink.
The worst is when you see a kid who's 7 or 8 years old. I'm like,
they don't appreciate these things.
And then they're knocking back the champagne. No, they aren't.
Oh, goodness. Well, I have a pretty big announcement to make.
What's that?
Something happened while you were gone, and somebody's pregnant.
Really? Who's pregnant?
Pretty kitty.
Oh, my God. Pretty kitty. Wait.
I thought, wow, she's looking a little pudgy, and then, boom. She just was bulbous in the midsection.
Oh, wow. So you're going to have some pretty kitties.
Yeah. We're going to have to figure out how to get her in. I mean, she's tried to come in a couple times, but I just want her cats to be safe. She only has one kitten left out of her litter from last year.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we need her.
I think you want to trap her.
Yeah.
Get a nice trap. And actually, if there's a shelter near you, they usually will rent the traps.
Yeah.
For cheap, and then you can get, put the food in there. They go in there, you get them, and you can take her to get TNR'd, or you can take her in and put her in a room and let her have her kittens. Weeks later, adopt out the kittens, and then you have your cat.
Yeah, I think we want to try to get her in.
Yeah.
Have the kittens, get them in a good spot, take them to the shelter, have Pretty Kitty hate me for the rest of her life. That kind of stuff.
No, you know what? I always thought that too, but they have very short memories. So you trap them, you take them, and then, 2 days later they forget. So.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I've done that to the heat miser, puffers. They're pals with mine. And I remember taking them, and they seem pretty, traumatized by the getting TNR'd, but now they're big pals of mine.
Yeah, well, Pretty Kitty, she comes close to me now, mostly because she's really hungry and I control the food. But big exciting news over our way.
That is exciting. And speaking of news,
let's head over to beauty news. I found this interesting article in The Independent out of Ireland. 3D printed imitation skin could take the place of animal testing, some
So,
cosmetic scientists say.
so this is like 3D printing of skin. Actually, I've done a couple of webinars with some experts in this area,
Okay.
and essentially they print cells. So they'll
Mm-hmm.
print a cell on a platform, and then they just build it up on like a biological scaffolding until they get like living skin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want to say this is new,
Yeah.
okay? Because I don't know that it is. When I was actually in my previous life at a salon brand, we used a company called Matte Tech. It's public information,
Right.
and they had some kind of printed engineered tissue like this, and it was purported to be a replacement for animal testing because you could do all sorts of safety testing on
Sure.
basically this living tissue that was grown, but it was like real living tissue.
Well, that is, I mean, what they have done for a long time is you just make a agar plate full of human skin cells,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been able to do that for a long time. But you don't put products directly on skin cells, so you don't really know, what does that data mean when something is, I don't know, changes some protein function of the biochemistry, because that's not going to happen in real life. So that's why these things have been limited. But these 3D tissue ones, they're like printing up the keratinocytes, the so the dead skin is at the top, and then the living stuff is near at the bottom, and they can keep these things alive for a while.
The only thing I'm a little hesitant to say, yes, this is the future and it could totally replace animal testing, is that it still doesn't cover reproductive toxicity.
Of course.
You need reproduction and multiple generations of a living organism to really tell that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this may be the future, but also it doesn't print stuff like lung tissue, or like you would need a lung, like if you're breathing something in, or how does it affect internal organs like the liver and so. So this is like skin. That'll give you some data, but it's not telling you like internal organs, and that can be a little more complicated. So I think we're a bit farther away with this technology to completely replace animal testing. Although I will say that animal testing in the industry has largely gone away for most things. So I don't, there's still a few things that's not, and there's some loopholes, especially in Europe with their REACH program.
Where they
Because,
force companies to animal test.
yeah, exactly. But overall, the cosmetic industry, we don't really want to animal test, and so I've gotten away from it a whole bunch, which mostly means we're just using the same chemicals we've already animal tested on, and don't really use anything terribly new.
It's a lot of people want innovation in the cosmetics industry as well, especially with hair color, and they don't realize the amount of safety data that's required to build these toxicology profiles of different ingredients. And some of it does require animal testing. And
Yeah.
this is one reason why you don't necessarily see really super new innovative stuff come to market.
Although I saw in cosmetics, which is happening right now, they were making a big deal about they have 211 new ingredients in their innovation zone. And I'm like looking at some, and I'm like, this doesn't seem very new. I don't know. Maybe I've been
I
in the
know.
industry too long.
Yeah, you're jaded. What did you see this week?
Well, I was contacted by Allure, and one of their reporters was writing a story about this TikTok trend where people are foregoing collagen supplements and they're using gelatin instead.
Oh,
And she
old
was
fashioned animal gelatin, huh?
exactly. She was
Wow.
wondering, hey, is eating gelatin the same as a collagen supplement? And so there's this whole story about that, which is interesting. But what do you think my take was on it?
I think that your take was probably like, it doesn't matter if it's like collagen because it's worthless.
Well,
Just go eat some jello or
right.
marshmallows.
Well, I mean, my basic message, I think, is that I don't think you'll notice a difference whether you eat gelatin or collagen, because neither of them are going to be doing much. But it is interesting that gelatin, why people get these confused is that gelatin is the amino acid profile of gelatin is about the same as collagen, because it comes
Okay.
from collagen. They just, to make gelatin, you take collagen and bone stuff and stuff from animals, and you break the protein down a little bit. So you still have these long chains of proteins, but they've been denatured, so it's not collagen anymore. But it's still like the same amino acids. When you have a collagen supplement, they just break those down to really tiny peptides. And the idea is that it's possible when you ingest a peptide, the whole peptide does not get digested down to amino acids. Some of those peptides can sneak through the stomach and go right into your bloodstream. Whereas
sneaky.
Right. Whereas with gelatin, it's such a big molecule, it's got to get broken down over time in the stomach, so it takes longer to digest gelatin. And so that's why if you do see any difference with a collagen supplement, that is because it's just the peptides from the collagen, whereas the gelatin, it just takes too long to digest, and so it doesn't have the small peptides that go intact into your skin.
If they do go intact into your skin.
Yeah. No, I'm not convinced that they do. I mean, they get into your bloodstream, and some parts of that'll go to your skin, maybe. But I've only seen dubious research papers by companies that sell collagen supplements that show that it's going to have a demonstrable effect.
Something we actually agree on. I think that they don't get absorbed through your stomach. I actually think they make it to your small intestine and then they go from there. But are they intelligent in being like, let me go to skin and make this old person look young? Nah, I don't think so.
No, it's just going overall. Yeah, that's there. Hey, I saw, Valerie, your old state was in the news again. They have this question was, is California going to ban anti-aging products for people under 18? There's this bill going through California Congress. What's going on here?
This isn't the first time that that's happened. I actually commented about this on LinkedIn as well because this particular article, because there's a reason it didn't pass the first time. This is something that is so hard to enforce. Yes, do 10-year-olds need anti-aging products? Absolutely not. But it's not like cigarettes or alcohol, some federally controlled substance. We're talking about kids going into Sephora with their parents' credit cards.
Right.
And buying things that their skin doesn't need, but should that be regulated? I think it's really hard to police. People can just buy online. Try going to a brewery website. Yeah, I'm 21. And literally anybody could enter that they're 21 and consent and go in. And
that's alcohol, which is much more strictly regulated.
I don't think this really does anything because ultimately at the end of the day, it's up to the parent to check what their kids are buying and using. And parents just aren't interested in parenting in this kind of way.
Yeah, this kind of regulation is just theater of doing something, It's not actually going to have much impact at all, except maybe make things more inconvenient for manufacturers. But it's like a kid is in Sephora, one thing has retinol in it and one doesn't. Like the cashier is supposed to look at the ingredient list, and so it makes no sense.
This product is flagged. I mean, I guess it's like cough syrup or whatever. But the other thing is, like, what 13-year-old has an ID that they can submit to the cashier for verification? And so the cashier says, are you 18? And the child will say, yes, I am 18. And they'll be like, great. That's enough to satisfy the requirements of the law. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it is. So good luck, California. They always do come out. They're probably the most regulated state in our country.
New York is pretty up there.
Yeah.
But California is also pretty up there. Yeah.
Well, California definitely is from the environmental standpoint. But now also the not buying anti-aging products either.
Well, speaking of not buying stuff, Talc. Johnson & Johnson had a Talc case update. And I know for a fact you probably saw it, Perry, because you're our Talc lawsuit corner expert.
That's right. Well, it turns out Johnson & Johnson was trying to propose a $10 billion payout for something that they still say isn't really their fault or isn't really happening. That's the idea that people who have used talc over their lives have a higher chance of getting ovarian cancer. And according to J&J and researchers, and I think most of the science would back this up, that there is no link between talc and ovarian cancer, but there are enough people who have sued J&J that for them it's easier just to settle than to continue to fight this in court. Because when it gets to a jury, juries are not scientifically minded, and they're
No,
often
not at
just
all.
siding with the, it's like the little guy versus a corporation. You got to pick the little guy, whether the science supports that or not. Anyway, what they tried to do is propose this $10 billion bailout, and it was all part of this whole strategy where part of J&J is going to go bankrupt. So anyway, the lawyers on the other side have rejected this, as did the judge. So this is still going through the court system.
Wow. I don't think this is ever going to end, at least not in our lifetime.
It's the only way I think would end is if J&J actually goes bankrupt and the company like turns into something else, because that's what happened to Dow Corning. Dow Corning was the creator of, or the manufacturer of, silicone breast implants.
Yep.
There was a whole court case about that. They settled, and they ended up going bankrupt, and then they came back because Dow Corning's still around, but they still had to pay out. Eventually, it was found out that there was no link between silicone and breast implants and bad health, but
did they get their money back?
They did not get their
No,
money.
they did not.
That is not how it works here.
Well, some people can get their money back. We have a couple bits of news in the recall news.
Oh, yeah, recall news.
The first one, the FDA announced a Mexican division of Henkel, specifically Henkel Capital SADCV, is voluntarily recalling over 1,000 units of its Tech Italy shampoo Totale because it's been contaminated with Klebsiella oxytoca.
Klebsiella oxytosa?
Never heard of it.
How'd that get in there?
We don't know, but exposure can cause infection of the eyes, nose, and skin, and no bueno. So not a whole lot of units, but if you bought it, check it out. You can contact them and get your money back.
Now, Henkel is the company behind, it's a German company, but it's behind Dial. Do they make other things we would know?
Well, they own Schwarzkopf, which is a big hair brand.
Yeah, I guess they have Purex also.
Oh, interesting.
So they have a bunch of different brands. So anyway, if you have any of those, we'll put a link in the show notes, but they have a lot number 1G27542266. If you have that one, bring it back because it's contaminated. Whoa.
Yikes. There was another big recall. Did you see this? The FDA issuing a voluntary recall of acne products due to benzene contamination.
Wait, this whole benzene thing again? This is still going on?
It's back. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What happened here?
So basically, an independent testing company tested.
Wait, let me guess. Is it Valshare or the Val company?
Oh gosh, I actually think they did do this. Yeah. So basically, what happened is there was this big to-do about benzoyl peroxide products containing too high of levels of benzene. And they tested hundreds of products. Well, the FDA went through and tested 95 of them and found that most of the products had undetectable or extremely low levels of benzene. So whatever this company was publishing in the news could not be validated. But some of them did test. And so recalls are being conducted at the retail level, not the consumer level. So basically, wherever you bought the product, the retailers are removing it from the stores, but consumers are not required to be notified all the way. Like Walgreens is not required to notify you that you have a product that could have, a high benzene content in it.
Or a detectable level of benzene. There's nothing that says these are unsafe, but, the FDA is going to be better safe than sorry. So it looks like we have La Roche-Posay, the Afacular dual action treatment, which expires in April 25. The Walgreens Acne Control Cleanser, Proactive Emergency Blemish Relief Cream with benzoyl peroxide at 5%, Proactive Skin Smoothing Exfoliator, SLMD Benzoyl Peroxide Acne Lotion, and Walgreens Tinted Acne Treatment Cream. All of these are being recalled. But like you said, this is on a company or a distributor level, not on a consumer level.
Exactly. So again, just the retailers have to take them off their shelves. Now, you may be wondering how this testing company got so many positive results and the FDA didn't. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the company that is doing this is trying to make news. So they're going to make a test that's more sensitive than what maybe the FDA is going to do.
And it's not even the test is more sensitive. It could just be a bad test method. Like they could be heating the sample, and heat can cause things to decompose and generate benzene, right? But
Right.
in ordinary conditions, your product wouldn't be exposed to the high levels of heat that would be required for that reaction to happen. So I I think it's probably just not a great test method. And that's
Yeah.
actually what happened with Valisure with the sunscreens and benzene. The FDA came in and looked at their test method and said, hey, wait a second. Your test method is terrible and it's creating all these false results.
Right.
And didn't stop them.
Well, they stay in the news by being provocative. And so I wouldn't say they're exactly lying, but they're rigging the game so it shows something that's beneficial to them and negative to all these companies.
And I bet they have something to sell at the end of the day. You just wait. They're going to come out and be like, wait, but did you know we have this patented technology. And
Sure.
if you used our technology, you wouldn't have benzene.
Oh, and people say I'm the cynical one on the show.
Oh, goodness. Well, we also have listener feedback, Perry.
Yeah, here's one from Laura who said, Hey, Valerie and Perry, a funny thing happened while I was enjoying your daily podcast. I just had to write and tell you about it. I just heard a commercial for One Skin products, and the ad touted their, quote, mastermind ingredient is the OS1 peptide that works at the cellular level. And then the company was founded and led by an all-women team of skin longevity scientists.
Oh, wow.
And she said, sorry, but may I ask, what is a skin longevity scientist and how does one become that? Thank you for all the hard work that you do to educate your audience and the sheer nonsense abounding from so many cosmetic companies. Your loyal patron member, Laura. Well, thank you for that, Laura. Now, Valerie, are you a skin longevity scientist?
I am a hair longevity scientist.
Now, is that for making hair longer or keeping it longer?
Well, I think having your hair grow longer.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. A longevity. So not keeping it on your head longer, just letting it grow longer.
Yeah, I can't help you with that. I'm sorry.
You know what's funny? This reminds me of a time I was on LinkedIn, and we had this person come and give a presentation at Alberto at, some corporate presentation. Anyway, she sold herself as a futurologist. And
Like a psychic?
No, like a trend predictor, or she's able to forecast the future. So she called herself a futurologist. And I just think that was just ridiculous. So I added that to my own LinkedIn where I'm like, well, I'm a futurologist. Like anybody can be that, right?
Oh,
It's kind of
gosh.
like a skin longevity scientist, right? You could just say you are, and then automatically, I guess you are.
That's ridiculous.
Hey, I saw Brian from Texas also had some feedback on one of our show, number 386.
Brian said, Hi, Beauty Brains. I love the ending song Cat in the Wall from episode 386. I couldn't find any info on the artist or who performed this song in the show notes. Could you kindly provide the info about the song? Where else can I stream it? Thanks.
Well, it's so good to know people like the Porch Kitty song. Is a song from the Porch Kitty album, which has not been published anywhere, but it will be going up on our Patreon account very soon. So
We need to add one bonus track, though, about Pretty Kitty and her future babies.
you send me a story about Pretty Kitty and the babies, and I'll put one together. But
All right.
to all your patrons out there, I'm going to put up a series of the Porch Kitty songs, because we have like 10 of them or something.
We do.
And yeah, so there you go. Well, thank you for that, though. The artist is Perry GPT. That's what I call it.
Oh my God.
Me and my AI pal, we kind of worked together to craft the lyrics and eventually come out with the song.
Oh gosh. Well, let's head over to our questions. Our first question comes to us from Amy, who is a patron on Patreon. Hi, Beauty Brains. I know that microplastics aren't great, but what are your thoughts on other polymers used in beauty personal care products? Specifically in response to this piece on Medscape and an accompanying paper by these authors. These authors are dermatologists, not chemists, and I know from listening to your podcast and my daughter that not all polymers are made alike. Full disclosure, my daughter is a material science and engineering student concentrating in polymers. My hunch is that their conclusions are a bit sweeping and simplistic, as new materials are always being developed, many with biodegradable properties. Plus, a lot of these products perform really well. Would love to hear your thoughts. Love the show and the Porch Kitty updates. Amy.
Well, I saw this article, and the first claim that caught my eyes is it says there's 500 plus microplastics in cosmetics, because I thought microplastics were pretty much gotten out of cosmetics, certainly out of like body washes and exfoliators and that kind of thing.
Well, physical microplastics, yes, where it's like a bead of a certain size and it's a physical particle. But now they're saying that certain acrylate copolymers or polyethylene polymers are microplastics. And there's becoming some specific definitions around these different polymers about whether or not they could be microplastics. That most of that regulatory framework is coming out of the EU.
Yeah.
But if you ask, let's say, an acrylates copolymer manufacturer, they'll say, well, technically, when it's not in water, it would be a microplastic. But once you solubilize it in water and the arms swell and it changes its conformation and solubility, it's no longer a microplastic and can't revert back into a microplastic. So I think there's a lot of confusion in this space, even as a formulator myself, to be honest.
Right. Well, I think what's happening here is some NGOs, but like one of the main ones is Plastic Soup Foundation. They made a list of all the different synthetic polymers that they think should be considered microplastics.
But it doesn't mean they are microplastic.
Right. Well, there is the European Chemical Agency, and they're part of a regulating body in Europe. And they have suggested that maybe some things that aren't technically considered microplastics should be. But, that's based on the EPA's list, which could include film formers, emulsifiers, and a bunch of thickeners, a bunch of things that, I don't think haven't been considered. So, essentially, now the ECHA, they are scientists, so it's not like this is just the NGO just making these things up. So that is something to consider. But if you're looking at their definition of microplastics, well, they say things like nylon 12, which is going to be found in like powdered cosmetics, that would be considered that, or polystyrene, which is a pacifier. It's a lot fewer than 500 ingredients, but there are some ingredients which they would consider microplastics, which currently aren't considered microplastic by regulations. Now, there's things that aren't considered microplastics, which the NGO would say is like a thing like PVP, which is a film former in hairspray, because PVP is water soluble. So when PVP gets in water, it solubilizes, so it goes away, and then that's where it can get broken out. So it's not a microplastic floating around. Neither is hydroxyethyl cellulose, which is also on that list, sodium polyacrylate.
I mean, it's so crazy. And by the way, there's natural forms of sodium polyacrylate that are being developed, but also it's completely biodegradable.
Right. So there you go. And carbomer too is another one in there. So basically what you have here is an article by dermatologists who are kind of fear-mongering. They don't really know what's in cosmetics, and they're relying on NGOs and an incomplete or a not widely accepted definition of microplastics to, well, essentially fearmonger, because this article said that they think microplastics could be completely banned from cosmetics.
Well, I don't think they'll I mean, they're going to create framework around what is a microplastic and what isn't, and then those things will be restricted, of course. But I think there's just a lot of other industries that use these materials as well, and they use them in way larger quantities than cosmetic products. And it's really not a safety concern, it's an environmental concern. So why aren't people going after these other industries as well?
Well, it's interesting you say that because let's play a little game, Valerie.
Okay.
I looked it up, and specifically what industries create the most microplastics. What do you think the number one microplastic is made?
Laundry.
Laundry is number 2. This is even bigger than laundry.
The automotive industry.
That's right. Rubber tires.
Wow.
Every time you drive your car, you're making little microplastics that get into the environment. When it rains, it gets into the waterways, and that eventually makes its way into, well, the oceans. And so, yeah, tires are 66% of microplastics. Laundry or synthetic textiles make up about 35%. Then we have paints and coatings from like boats and such.
Yeah, that's what I actually was going to say, the shipping industry, but then I was like, nah, I mean, that's big, but it's not that big.
Right, it's about 10%. We have industrial processes, like just synthetic polymer creations or something, about 5%. And you know what cosmetics ends up?
0.06%.
0.3% according to this, but yeah, less than 1%. And yet who gets all the regulations or gets all the bad press? It's the cosmetic industry. So I don't know. I don't know if these guys are trying to solve a problem while ignoring the really big problems.
Exactly. It's no way to move the needle. But speaking of needles, our next question comes to us from Natalie.
Natalie says, hey, Beauty Brains team, I love your podcast because I really appreciate your science-based approach to skincare. I have a question about skincare for people, women specifically, with noticeable facial hair or peach fuzz. I wanted to ask if there is any evidence-based recommendations for those who, number one, choose to remove the facial hair, so by razors or lasering or waxing, or choose to leave that facial hair as it is. I'd love to hear your insights on this topic. Thank you for all your great work, Natalie.
I don't think there's evidence-based information that we have that says choose one method over another, because I really think it comes down to personal preference and probably skin tone, how thick your hair is, how thin your hair is. I do know that the only thing that I can think of that probably has scientific literature behind it is if you have too dark of a skin tone or your hair is too light in color, laser hair removal is not a good option for you, because the way the laser works is it detects the dark brown pigment, melanin found within your hair. It's really electron rich, and so it gets attracted to it. And if your hair is too light, it means you don't have enough melanin in your hair fiber for the laser to find. And if your skin is too dark, it also can't tell a difference. And that has a ton of evidence behind it, and also just consumer experience. So I think that's the only one that I can think of. But everything else really is a personal preference.
Right. If you could leave it on or shave it or pluck it or wax it. I think the thing is, if you're going to do that, you'll want to soothe the skin afterwards.
Well, you shave regularly, right?
Yeah, I do. I mean, when I think of it. But, I mean, I would not take product use advice from me because I'm a terrible cosmetic product user. But, my skin is still there, and I shave without putting anything extra on. But I think most people their skin would feel better if they do apply something afterwards, maybe something anti-inflammatory. The thing I will say about it is also there's no truth to the idea that if you shave it, it's going to make it grow back faster.
No evidence for that.
Nor is waxing going to make it grow back faster or anything. So it's just going to grow how it grows.
Exactly. Now, I have done a couple things. Well, one, obviously, I've left my facial hair as is, like most people. But one time, I was getting my eyebrows groomed. This was, maybe it was over 10 years ago for sure. Yeah. And Mr. Cosmetic Chemist came with me because he also needed his eyebrows done, but not too done, just
Sure.
done enough for a guy to get rid of the real scragglies and trim the hair. And Mr. Cosmetic Chemist said, do you want to get your mustache done? And I was like, excuse me, I don't have a mustache. And it was this Armenian woman who we'd been going to her for years at that point. And Mr. Cosmetic Chemist said, Angie, do you think she has a mustache? And she always wore these magnifying glasses over her eyes when she was waxing or, like tweezing she could see. So her eyes were real googly looking. And she was like, yes, she has mustache. Like that.
Wow.
And anyway, so I got my mustache waxed, and it wasn't too bad because I felt like all one rip. But sometimes you can get like a lot of little bumps on the skin. Getting your mustache threaded is the worst because it's like a little string plucking out all your hairs one by one, and it's even getting the little tiniest of hairs. It's so painful and terrible.
Wait, can you just do that right after you use the dental floss that you're using, and then? But is it like that? Like
I wonder if they could use the old-fashioned dental floss. The kind that actually looks like a mini rope. I bet.
Sure.
Yeah. Huh. Anyway, so you're right. Skin is delicate. It does need to be taken care of, maybe with like an ointment afterwards. But I've also just done shaving as well, and that's been fine because it gets rid of all the peach fuzz. And I just put like a lubricant on my face. Mostly it's my mustache, guys. Don't get crazy. But everyone has peach fuzz, like even on their cheeks and stuff like that. So I've done that because I just don't have a ton of hair to where I can get lasered. My facial hair is actually blonde, except for my eyebrows. But yeah.
When I was in China, I saw a guy there who I think he tattooed on some eyebrows.
Huh.
Because his eyebrows, I mean, he had some hair with eyebrows, but his eyebrows looked a little tattooed, I think. Do people do that?
People do. It's very common. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Speaking of common, we got an audio question. This one comes to us from Kat.
Hi, Beauty Brains. I'm one of the folks who came across your podcast thanks to the New York Times recommendation and have really been enjoying listening to your insights into the beauty industry and formulating. Thank you so much. My question today is, I stumbled upon a peer-reviewed study that says applying jojoba oil could potentially increase penetration of retinol into the skin strata by a nearly 40-fold factor, and wondered what you thought about that. I've been applying a generic form of Differin and following that up with Veleda's rose oil, whose main ingredient is jojoba oil, and think I'll do that probably no matter what, as my skin seems to like it, and I like the scent and formulations. But just was curious if maybe this means my retinol is working for me even better. Look forward to your thoughts. Thank you again. Bye.
Valerie, she found us through the New York Times article, so yay.
Isn't it so funny that we like totally forgot about it and casually mentioned it at the end of an episode, and now I'm like telling everybody.
There you go. All right. How about this question? Did you see this paper? She shared a paper where it says applying jojoba oil could increase penetration of retinol by 40-fold. I guess that's 40 times, which is a lot. So I took a look at this, and this was in Clinical Cosmetic Investigation Dermatology. I
actually know the main author on this paper.
Really?
I do. James V. Gruber. He also goes by Vince Gruber professionally. And anytime you see a study, this is like study 101. What are they telling me and why are they giving me the information? And so usually that's who funded the study, who is, who's behind the information. And these people work at a company called Vantage, and they purchased a handful of years ago a jojoba farm operation, and so they sell a lot of jojoba oil.
So the study was conducted entirely by researchers affiliated with that single cosmetic ingredient supplier. So that's a little bit of a red flag. Also, I didn't see that there was a mention of peer review beyond being published in an open access journal. It's a little interesting.
I would like to lower the red flags a little bit because
lower them. Yeah, well, I mean, we know Vince. He's
it's
a good
a
guy.
red flag, sincere,
okay? Right? Yeah.
I mean, it is a red flag. It's it was they have a product to sell or that their
Yeah.
bosses have to sell. And it's in an open access journal, no peer review. Okay, I get it. But I think jojoba oil is really fantastic. And it's something we take for granted in products because we just think, oh, jojoba oil, it's been around forever. But it actually wasn't really commercially available until the late 1960s. And my mentor was one of the first people to formulate a hair product with it.
Oh,
And he couldn't even get it. This was in the mid 1960s because there was no way to get it. But now it's so ubiquitous everywhere. And I think it's really great. It has a really interesting chemical profile. It's called an oil, but it's actually a liquid wax. It has a lot of great synergy with our skin. It's super stable. And so I'm not surprised that there is some data behind it because I personally think it's a wonder oil.
we had a VO5 jojoba oil version of we just put a drop in there and it just rinsed right out, but it was one of our better sellers. People love jojoba oil.
I actually think it's a really great oil for skin.
So what's this deal about the 40-fold increase? Now it says it's in vitro. So how does that translate to in vivo? So in vitro means it's just in the lab. In vivo, that just suggests that there wasn't a study done on people. So you can't really, does it translate or not? Who knows?
I don't know if you can do a study. Now, the method that they used is called a skin pampa method. And basically it's a permeation assay, which tells you how well, at least into skin, because this is skin pampa. There's other varietals like mucous membranes and all that kind of stuff. But it basically just tells you, yes, in vitro, how well does something penetrate into skin. I don't think you could do it on a human without taking some kind of biopsy or analyzing blood levels, right?
Right. Blood levels, or you could do tape stripping, maybe see how far it goes down. I don't know, but then the retinol might. Yeah, it would be hard to do. I was looking at this Pampa that uses a synthetic skin model, so it's not human skin. And we used to use pig skin.
Okay.
So you would take a little aluminum tube and you'd put the pig skin in there and it's test how long it takes to get into the water below. So that's like the old-fashioned way of doing it for penetration. What would be good for this? That 3D printed skin.
I know. Wow, we should tell Vince about it.
So as far as this 40-fold increase, I know the scientists who did it were probably sincere and they got the data they got. Whether it translates into real life, that is yet to be seen. I don't think this study proves that. However, the most important piece was that you feel good using the jojoba oil with the retinol, and maybe it's giving you a boost. Probably not, but from my skeptical point of view. But, you might as well keep doing it.
Well, now let me just play devil's advocate here.
Please.
Okay.
Wait, which devil are you? Which side is the devil on?
I'm on the jojoba oil side, Perry.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Now,
so you would be the jojoba advocate or something.
I put the V in Vantage. I'm just kidding. I don't, guys. Okay. I just know them, they're great materials. The jojoba oil is fantastic. Anyway, so the results they got kind of make sense if you think about it, because retinol is an oil-soluble material. The oil-soluble retinol is a vitamin A derivative, and all the oil-soluble vitamins are DAKE, DAKE. So think Drake without the R. And it makes sense if you add a significant quantity of oil, such as 10% jojoba oil, to a cream that contains retinol, you could get more penetration into skin. Now, your skin doesn't like water, but it is accepting pretty much of some lipophilic materials.
Yeah, all you say is correct there. I will say they did blend it with soybean oil too, so you don't know, was the soybean oil the one that helped it? They didn't do the study where they just did jojoba oil by itself and soybean oil by itself.
Oh yeah, maybe they couldn't afford the jojoba oil.
They make it. I'm sure they can afford it, but sometimes when you're doing industry research, you're not as scientifically rigorous as you might be if you're doing university research, because you don't necessarily want to find out something you don't want to find out.
Yeah.
That's why I'm skeptical of most cosmetic research. It's because the research is not done necessarily to answer the question that you really want to know. It's to answer the question that the business wants you to find the answer to. So
That
it's
is
biased
true.
in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could ask Vince the next time I see him, if I remember.
Well, maybe he'll just hear us talking about it on the show because he does listen. You do listen, don't you, Vince?
I hope not.
All right. Boy, oh boy, look at us go. We got a question from a patron question from Sammy. It says, "Hi, Beauty Brains. I have hopped on the trend of hypochlorous acid spray, as a lot of people have, but I have a question about it. Is it possible to make a product with this and another acid like azeleic acid, or do they cancel each other out? The brand Topicals has a spray with both ingredients, and I can't wrap my brain around how they could formulate that properly, especially since azeleic acid is already said to be tough to formulate. Thanks in advance." Have you formulated with azeleic acid?
I have it. I also use it. I use the prescription strength because I have rosacea, and it's been very effective, I do have to say, in helping clear up my rosacea pustules.
Now, you don't use it around where you shave your mustache, though, right?
No, I put it all over. I mean, the
Oh,
directions say just to put it where your rosacea breakout is, but I put it
sure.
all over my whole face.
Oh, okay. Hey, one. Hey, your face looks great, so
Oh,
why
thank
not?
you. Yeah. Now, it is an interesting predicament because azelaic acid has a very specific set of requirements for getting it into solution. It has extremely low water solubility, like
Right.
extremely, extremely, extremely low water solubility.
And it has to be in a low pH, like pH 3 to 4 or so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised they could get it into a spray with hypochlorous acid, which, I mean, one, I don't believe in anyway, but two, I mean, they must not be using a lot of azelaic acid because there's no way you could get 10%, which is like the minimum you need to be effective in a
Right.
spray with hypochlorous acid that's primarily water-based.
And hypochlorous acid, that you need the pH of like 5, before it starts to oxidize or something. So, yeah, it is a head scratcher. How do you think they do it? Just use a really low level of hypochlorous acid and not a high level of the azelaic acid.
I mean, it has to be fairy dust in there, right? The other thing is I actually couldn't find one product that on the Topicals website that put them together because I was like, how is this even possible?
Yeah.
So I went to look. I actually found that they have a routine where there's like this mist that you put on your skin, and that has the hypochlorous acid. It also has salicylic acid, which also was a head scratcher because they basically have to put a ton of denatured alcohol into the product to get the salicylic acid to dissolve because that's also oil soluble.
Wow.
And then they have a bunch of water soluble stuff otherwise. But the second product that you apply after the mist is the one with the azelaic acid. And I can tell you where it's at in the ingredient list. And the fact that they don't have a percentage disclosed, at least on their website, tells me there probably is not a lot of azelaic acid, even in the second product that you apply. So it's not that they're together, they're used in conjunction.
Okay. Yeah. Well, interesting. It would be a formulation challenge, which they probably get around by keeping the products separated, I guess.
Yeah, pretty clever, huh?
Looks like we have time for one more question.
Comes to us from Katie. Hi, Valerie and Perry. Absolutely love your show, and I'm writing in for the first time in hopes you see this and can help. My teen son has developed moderate hormonal acne over the past year. We've worked with his pediatrician on treatments for his face, but lately I've noticed a worsening of really severe breakouts at and beyond his hairline. I've read so many suggestions, changing his pillowcase every other day, making sure he's fully rinsing out his shampoo, using non-comedogenic conditioners, etc. And I'm curious about what your thoughts are on things like what shampoos may be helpful, lots of suggestions for Neutrogena T-cell shampoo, and if he should be avoiding conditioners altogether. Any other thoughts on best ways to tackle this are appreciated. Thank you for all you do to educate us, Katie.
You know what I thought when I read this?
What?
She must be a really nice mom.
Oh.
She's doing all this effort. Like, I remember when I was growing up, and it's probably because there were 7 of us. That's a lot of kids. But my mom didn't give she never gave me any acne advice or any personal hygiene advice when I was in high school and such.
Harry, I had a wart on my lip in 5th grade. My nickname was Wart Lip, and it wasn't until I cried and cried and cried that my parents took me to get it removed.
Well, that's so just different parenting, but
Oh.
but it's very nice. All right, so let's talk about this. The Neutrogena T-Sal shampoo. That sounds like a good idea because salicylic acid is, in fact, one of the approved ingredients for anti-acne. And so if it's in that Neutrogena product, it should help with that.
Yeah, salicylic acid is really great. It's hard because I get it. You put this shampoo on your head and then you put a conditioner on afterwards. Conditioners usually have oils. They have a lot of plant esters and waxes.
Wait, you know which one that doesn't have oils? VO5.
Oh, yeah.
It's just citramonium chloride.
Well, great recommendation, but it still has fatty alcohol, right?
It does have cetyl alcohol, and yeah, it does have, but those rinse out, right?
Yeah, that's true. And so at first I thought, oh, maybe it's his styling products that he's wearing, because when you leave a styling product on the hair, your scalp emanates a ton of heat, believe it or not, and it slowly melts the products and has them dissipate all over the whole scalp, and you can get a lot of gathering around the hairline. And so I didn't see a hair styling product mentioned here, but that would be my first recommendation to make sure he's absolutely putting nothing there. But then I would just try the T-Sal shampoo, and depending on the length of his hair, honestly, maybe he could even skip the conditioner.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I didn't use conditioner, but again,
I don't think you use conditioner now, do you?
Oh, yeah, I use it now.
Oh, what do you use?
I have my own conditioner that I created, and I'm working.
Oh, that's right. You have tons of bottles of it, and you have to use it. Yeah.
This is what happened. You do a production run, and then if you don't sell them all out, they're just in your basement, and you just use them up.
Oh my gosh, we should give some away to our patrons.
We should. That'd be nice of us. We should do it. We should do a run.
Well, yeah, no, it's a really tough thing. And this is public information. They advertised that I work for them. I'm a scientific advisor for the company, but there's a company called Ochre, and they actually created a product line based on fungal acne.
Yeah.
And having...
Wait, you're putting fungal acne on? No.
Oh, no, the product was based on, like, how do you combat fungal acne, right? Because one of the founders, he had an exact same dilemma like this, and they did a ton of research on what ingredients can contribute to this type of phenomenon, and they actually have a really great database that you could look through and great information resource as well, but it's called Ochre, and it's a...
O-C-R-E?
O-C-H-R-E.
All right. Well, you know what? Do you hear that music?
Is it a cat song?
No, that happens way at the end. So.
Oh, bummer. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Hey, if you get a chance, could you head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review? It's going to help other people find the show, and sure, we have a full docket of beauty questions to answer.
Speaking of questions, we love audio questions with real human voices. So easy to do. Just record one on your smartphone and email it to thebeautybrains@gmail.com. Or you can even use the form in the show notes on this episode.
Yeah, and the AI is not that hard to do either, but it's not nearly...
But we hate it, Perry. We hate it. The listeners have spoken.
Some have spoken. Hey, the Beauty Brains are on Patreon. If you notice, we didn't have any commercials in this thing because, we can't be completely objective if we're running commercials. And so, in order to do that, we require your support on Patreon. So if you want to support the show and you appreciate what we do, go to patreon.com/thebeautybrain and subscribe at any level. Not only do you get a transcript, you also get your questions a higher priority, and you can hear the full song of the Porch Kitties.
And you're gonna get the full album one day.
The full album of the Porch Kitties.
And maybe free product that's been piled in Perry's basement closet for years.
Which still works wonderfully.
I bet it does. Also working wonderfully is our social media accounts this year. On Instagram, we're at The Beauty Brains 2018. On X, we're at The Beauty Brains. On Bluesky, we're at The Beauty Brains. We have a Facebook page and a TikTok.
Yeah, I've tried to stay away from social media lately. It's too depressing to me. I don't know why, but you know what? I'm going to try to get us on YouTube now too. So we'll just have parts of our podcast on YouTube. It'll just be static pictures, but that'll be something.
And the cat songs could be helpful while people are cleaning. They could listen to the show, and then the cat songs come on.
That's so true. Porch kitties.
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks again for listening, everyone. And remember, be brainy about your beauty.
Thanks, everyone.
Kittens.
Benito and Blue share some loving news. He mises under bushes, yeah, he's laying low, waiting for the moment to steal Puffer's show. Porch kitties living life free and wild. Each one's got their own style, ain't no docile child. From dawn to dusk, they're claiming their space, and in Chicago backyard is their own dang place. Porch kitties living life free and wild. Each one's got their own style, ain't no docile child. From dawn to dusk, they're claiming their space.